Russian dictator Vladimir Putin is once again turning to open threats. In a new interview with India Today, he claimed that Russia will take Donbas and so-called Novorossiya anyway, whether by military force or other means. The remarks are already circulating widely on Kremlin-backed media. His statement comes just hours after peace talks between U.S. delegation and Russian officials. Putin also claims that Russia allegedly offered Ukraine a deal to put its troops out of Donbas and avoid further fighting, but that Kyiv prefers to wage war. He acknowledged that Moscow rejected several parts of proposed peace plan, dismissing the move as a difficult work. Putin added that US President Donald Trump is looking for ways to reach a compromise on Ukraine, but called it a challenging task. Early assessments by the Institute for the Study of War noted that Putin has repeatedly described so-called Novorossiya as an integral part of Russia. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has gone even further, defending Novorossiya as the entire east and south of Ukraine, including the Kharkiv, Dnipro, Odessa and Mykolaiv regions. US President Donald Trump said the American delegation had a fairly successful meeting with the Russian leader Vladimir Putin at the Kremlin. He made the comments on Wednesday, December 3rd, when journalists asked whether Putin actually wants to end the war. Trump said that both Viktor and Kushner got that impression.
He would like to end the war. That was their impression. Now, whether or not, that was their impression. Their impression was that he would like to see the war ended. I think he'd like to get back to dealing a more normal life. I think he'd like to be trading with the United States of America, frankly, instead of, losing thousands of soldiers a week. But their impression was very strongly that he'd like to make a deal.
Meanwhile, The Times report that the Russian leader shows no signs of stepping back from his imperial ambitions. The talks, the outlet says, have only widened the gap between Europe and Washington. According to The Times, when a private jet carrying Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff took off from a Moscow airport on the morning of December 3rd, it became clear that Washington had once again overestimated Vladimir Putin's willingness to abandon his goal to subjugating Ukraine. With no further talks on the schedule, the war is likely to grid on into February, reaching the fourth anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion. In reality, the only tangible outcome of Washington's latest peace push has been a deeper rift between Europe and the United States, a development the Kremlin is surely pleased to see. With little hope for a breakthrough, Trump now faces a choice: either step back from negotiations entirely or step up pressure on Kyiv, Moscow, or both. Ukraine is preparing its own round of talks in the United States after an American delegation held negotiations with Russian dictator Vladimir Putin in Moscow. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky announced the upcoming meeting in his nightly address. Rustem Umerov, Secretary of Ukraine's National Security and Defense Council, will head the delegation. A meeting with Trump's special envoy Steve Witkoff is scheduled for Thursday, December 4th.
We are preparing meetings in the United States following the return of the American team from Moscow and subsequent consultations in Washington. Rustem Umerov, Andriy Hanatov, and all the key personnel for the negotiations will continue working with representatives of President Trump. We expect updates in the coming days regarding these meetings and contacts, whether in person or via phone calls. There is ongoing communication between all partners and between the partners in Ukraine.
The president of Ukraine said US-Ukraine talks are making progress. He added that during meetings in Geneva and Florida, Ukraine's position was not just heard, it was taken seriously. Reuters, citing White House sources, report that U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner briefed President Donald Trump and Ukrainian officials after their meeting in Moscow with Russian dictator. Meanwhile, Finland's President Alexander Stubb warned that any potential deal to end the war may not deliver a fully just peace for Ukraine, and that Kyiv must be prepared for that possibility. He made the comments in an interview with Finland's MTV Utisat channel.
The reality is that peace can be good, bad, or somewhere in between. The reality also is that we, the Finns, need to prepare for the moment when peace is achieved. and that many of the conditions for a just peace, which we have talked about so much over the past 4 years, are unlikely to be met.
Stubb said Europe is currently focused on safeguarding Ukraine's sovereignty and territorial integrity, but he added that the coming days and weeks will show whether the latest push for peace brings any real progress. The Finnish president also expressed skepticism that Russia would accept a peace plan jointly agreed by Ukraine and the United States. Belgian Prime Minister Bart De Wever expressed doubt that Russia will lose the war against Ukraine or pay reparations for the damage caused. He made the comments in response to a question from the chief of editor of La Libre. The remarks come following calls to the European countries to use Russia's frozen assets held in Belgium to support Ukraine.
During a war, sovereign assets are frozen. Once the conflict ends, the losing side is supposed to give up all or part of these assets to compensate the victors. But who really believes that Russia will lose in Ukraine? It's a fairy tale, a complete illusion. Even if it were to lose, instability in a country that possesses nuclear weapons would be undesirable. And who believes that Putin would calmly agree to the confiscation of Russian assets?
Belgian Prime Minister said the government had received signals from Moscow warning of risks tied to the potential seizure of Russian assets in Belgium. De Wever warned that Russia might strike back at Western assets, with Belgium's Euroclear holding roughly 16 billion euros in Russian funds. Belgium's Foreign Minister Maxime Prévost on December 3rd criticized the legal framework prepared by the European Commission for a reparation loan to Ukraine based on frozen Russian assets. This came ahead of the Commission's formal presentation of the legal framework. Prévost stressed that even if EU member states want to move forward with the reparations loan, Belgium insists that all risks arising from the scheme, especially given the most frozen Russian assets are on Belgian soil, must be fully covered. EU leaders are racing to agree on a final financial plan ahead of the next regular European Council summit in Brussels on December 18th. Political reports that despite frustration among allies, De Wever remains firm on his position. European officials are under growing pressure as the summit is considering crucial for securing long-term support for Ukraine. Italy is halting its participation in NATO's program to provide US weapons to Ukraine. Foreign Minister Antonio Tajani said it would be premature for Italy to join the Pearl program given ongoing peace talks, Bloomberg reports.
If we reach an agreement and the fighting stops, weapons will no longer be needed. Other things will be required instead, such as security guarantees.
Journalists note that Italy's move sends a clearly signal that Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni's government is shifting its strategy toward Ukraine following depleted funds and internal tensions within the ruling coalition. Although the government insists it will continue back in Ukraine, Italy is the first European country to openly suggest pausing further weapons deliveries during ceasefire talks. Ukraine has said it will need another €1 billion in Pearl supplies to keep defending itself through the winter. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte noted that roughly two-thirds of alliance members participate in the program. The initiative is also attracting non-European partners. Australia and New Zealand have joined, providing military aid packages of $63 million and $8.6 million respectively, Rutte said following a meeting in Brussels.
Burden sharing is now in a much better place than it was only, let's say, 4 or 6 weeks ago. And the fact that now even New Zealand and Australia, and they are not in NATO, they are close NATO partners through the Indo-Pacific for Cooperation, but they are not in NATO, that they have also now committed to the program is really great news. And it gives us the sustained flow of weapons into Ukraine from essential US stockpiles.
Following a NATO meeting, 5 countries pledged $1 billion to purchase weapons for Ukraine under the Pearl program. Ukrainian forces are set to receive, among other equipment, missiles for Patriot system. That's all for now. Thank you for watching and don't forget to subscribe to our channel and leave your comments below.